Questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The PBO revealed today that this Prime Minister will apply a second carbon tax on the backs of Quebecers. Beyond all the taxes that Quebecers have to pay on gas already, in addition, he's adding another 17 cents. And he'll apply the sales tax as well, for a total of 20 cents of tax for every litre, for every family, for every farmer, for every company in Quebec. Mr. Speaker, how much will every Quebec family have to pay? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that Quebecers who are listening today know how the fight against climate change is a key issue, and they know how the Conservatives on this question have nothing to say. They have no plan or measures, despite the promises they made during their last election campaign. They don't even believe in the reality of climate change, even though there's flooding in Quebec and record fires in Alberta. I think people expect a responsible government on climate change, and that's not happening with the Conservatives. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition, that's absolutely nonsense. The Quebecers are the greenest people in the world, and this Liberal government is preventing construction of dams and other projects for hydroelectricity that is green. At the same time, they want to force Quebecers to pay an additional 20 cents per litre or $500 per family in tax, and they want to do so with the support of the bloc that is wokest, Mr. Speaker. It's only the Conservative Party that has the logic to eliminate this aggressive tax. Mr. Speaker, will the government listen to good sense and axe the tax? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will allow my honourable colleagues from the bloc answer that question to know if they are wokest. I think that's not up for me to say, but I would like to say that once again, the Leader of the Opposition is saying something that's absolutely not true. What we're doing is a mechanism to ensure that refineries who have made record profits in recent years, Mr. Speaker, do their fair share with respect to the climate change crisis. And I think that people expect every areas in the country to do their fair share in terms of climate change. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Saying these things, it is the Parliamentary Budget Officer this government appointed, and just yesterday the Finance Minister said we should believe the Parliamentary Budget Officer. What did he say? He revealed that the first carbon tax will cost 41 cents a litre, and now that there's a second carbon tax of 17 cents a litre, and then when you add the HST on those two taxes, you get a total new tax increase of 61 cents a litre, costing $2,000 a family. How are Canadians going to be able to pay their bills after this new and latest Liberal tax hike?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to quote from the Parliamentary Budget Officer's own analysis, which, and I quote, does not attempt to account for the economic and environmental costs of climate change. He's looking, the Parliamentary Budget Officer is looking at one side of the ledger, Mr. Speaker, without looking at the other side of the ledger. And we know that climate change is already costing Canadians billions of dollars every year. In fact, Mr. Speaker, tens of billions of dollars every year. Of course, if you're the Conservative Party of Canada, you don't believe in climate change and you don't care that those costs to Canadians. But unfortunately, facts are facts, Mr. Speaker, and those costs are real to all Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Climate costs are real, but they will not be reduced as a result of this tax. That's right. And so the minister's argument leads to a dead end. The Parliamentary Budget Officer said carbon tax 1 would cost 41 cents a litre. Now carbon tax 2, 17 cents a litre. And then they want to tax the tax on the tax by putting HST on top of all that, so it's going to be 61 cents a litre in carbon taxes. We already have 1 in 5 Canadians skipping meals because they can't afford the price of food. How many people are going to go hungry when this government imposes this tax hike?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, the Leader of the Opposition is wrong yet again, because our plan is working and this has led to reduce an emission in Canada and climate change pollution by more than 50 million tons between 2019 and 2021 beyond COVID. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, it's called a pandemic because it was happening all over the world, and yet Canada in 2021 and 2020 and 2021 has the best performance of all G7 countries, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The news out of the PBO this morning is shocking. A second carbon tax that would add another 17 cents on a litre of gas, increasing it from 41 cents to 61 cents. Wow. As the adage goes, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are no fools, and this government should be ashamed of its campaign of punitive raids on the bank accounts of Canadians to bankroll their historic debt. Mr. Speaker, with the cost of gas, heat, and groceries ballooning, does this out-of-touch government really think Canadians can afford this debilitating hit to their finances?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So when the Conservative Party of Canada in the 2021 election campaigned on bringing carbon pricing to $170 a ton, or putting in place a clean fuel regulations, were they trying to fool Canadians? Is that what we're to understand, Mr. Speaker? Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Coast of Bay Central Notre Dame.
Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister has been dodging questions about her second carbon tax ever since she came back to work. Well, now we finally have the answer thanks to the PBO. Now, this additional 17 cents a litre is even going to be charged on fuel used by our fishermen. Oh, no. And for families in Newfoundland and Labrador, it's going to be an extra $850 a year. Combined with her original carbon tax, it's going to be $2,000 per year for those families. So, Mr. Speaker, my question is, when is this Liberal government going to stop trampling on the people of Newfoundland and Labrador and axe this useless carbon tax?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, our plan is working. We've reduced carbon pollution by more than 50 million tons. Canada has the best emission reduction profile of all G7 countries in 2020 and 2021. And what we're doing for the great people of Newfoundland, Mr. Speaker, is helping them land investment of more than $300 million in the last month alone in the new Bryanus plant biorefinery. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the government said, and not quite correctly, that his plan was working. The UN published a report last fall that said that Canada came 58th out of 63 countries on climate change. And he says everything's going well. What's worse, the PBO today confirmed the report, saying that the second Liberal carbon tax would cost the average Quebec family $436. In Montreal, 1 in 5 families doesn't have enough to afford food. The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I could cite a long list of independent organizations that have all said our plan is working and that our greenhouse gas emissions have started to decrease. There's Equiterre, Eco-Justice, Environmental Defense. They've all publicly said that our climate change plan is starting to work. There's a lot of work still to be done. I'm the first to admit that. But the last thing we need is the Conservatives who would yank us back 20 years in time when it comes to dealing with climate change. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, 58th. The minister responsible for ranking us 58th talked about Equiterre. Mr. Speaker, 30 years ago, he was the founder of Equiterre. And he sued the then Environment Minister, saying that his promises were all talk and no action. Who said that? The founder of Equiterre. The situation is troubling for Quebec families. They're going to have to pay $436 more. How are they supposed to be able to afford that? Sorry. I just have a quick comment. I'd like to remind members that when you refer to another member, you refer to them either by their title or by their riding name, not by a made-up title. I know people have a lot of imagination, but that's the rule. The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to cite a few quotes from experts. Alison Simard said that the Liberals' reduction plan would be beneficial from the Climate Action Network. The city of Quebec City is pleased with this plan. It's crucial to the future of our cities and future generations. So these are all allies of the Liberal government, not the Conservative Party.